Is this your first projector presentation? Have you done one before? Yeah, okay. All right, well, good luck.
You can see over there and you can see over there.
You look fantastic on all the screens, so
yes.
20 slides are yours.
Thank you, guys. Wow, what a moment. Thank you, guys. It's a big honor to be here. Thank you to JIA, thank you, Pecha Kucha, and thank you, Arcasia, because that's where it all began in some ways. For me, I realize this slide also runs for 20 seconds, so I'm going to have to talk about who I am and what I do for the next 10 seconds. I happen to chair a committee, a fantastic committee in Arcasia called the Arcasia Committee on Young Architects. Big shout out to you guys out here. And I also do architecture and sustainability work back in my favorite city, and that's Singapore. Anyone been there? Pretty much, right? And a big shout out to everyone from Singapore who's here as well. Come on, all 5 of you, come on. Alright, so Singapore sits geographically in a pretty exciting position in Southeast Asia. Traditionally, it used to be part of the trade routes. It still is. So the traditional economy used to be ports and also import and export. And with the new Belt Road and the new trade routes coming up, what then can Singapore do to remain relevant in the eyes of the world? So the original island is what you see in white or in the very, very light pink. It's about 570 square kilometers, pretty tiny, and is beginning to expand, or it's expanded and will expand up to about 740 square kilometers. That's after the land has been reclaimed. That's about a 40% increase in this land area. That's pretty amazing, I think. The skyline is what you're familiar with. The bright lights, big city. Not quite as bright maybe as Tokyo, but bright still. And here's a collage of also the public housing facilities and the public housing, I suppose, homes that we get in Singapore, which is where 85% of the population of Singapore actually lives. Here's a project I personally worked on with a company called Szue Hann, where I began working slightly more than 10 years ago, and it's got a whole bunch of units which are, for public housing, and it's also got these little communal areas. So even in high-rise living, we try to create areas of interaction and chance encounters and a community building. This too is a project. It's a private property, really, but it's also quite public in the way that we've actually lifted the ground plane, and the ground plane then, as you can see in the contours on this image and the next one, starts to simulate a natural environment where you can actually walk through and continue from that street. So the public areas of, in this case, the Park Royal Hotel, and also the dining areas would be on the ground floor. And as you hit up and go upwards, we try to bring the gardens into the sky as well. So these gardens really would then be visually accessible and would basically contribute towards, I suppose, visual relief, and that makes everyone a little bit healthier as well. Another project, also with Szue Hann, is basically a park conservation project. So there are 3 old buildings. We took away only the middle one. So to us, that's a bit of a sustainable construction method as well, and turned that really into a furniture showroom that then bleeds both into the old buildings on the left and on the right, therefore extending that furniture show space into both the old and the new. Here's another project with a different company, and it's an industrial building that's retrofitted to become an office slash industrial building as well. So this used to be 10 stories. It looked sort of like a modern building, and we basically expanded it and crafted new spaces and carved out, again, new volumes and new spaces for interaction. Now, with Singapore, there is a limit in land, so how then do we continue building up, and how then do we continue pushing for new economies? And this is something that the Committee for the Future Economy in Singapore, which is a panel of experts that's been set up last year, has actually proposed for Singapore. So that has a lot of implication on architects like myself as well. We've talked about creating land in the sea. We've talked a little bit about high-rise buildings, right, which we see everywhere. And we'll talk a little bit more about going underground. Well, literally. And presto. So what we've begun to do is started digging underground. In this case, about 150 meters below sea level, where we store petrochemicals, therefore releasing the ground area for activity space and also for areas with higher real estate value. And in this case, the concept for an underground science city as well, where research, labs, and effectively we could function underground 150 meters right now and not even know it. And also images really of skyrise plantations, skyrise gardens, parks, renewable energy sources and so on, where you could literally live in the sky, and it really could be the norm. I know that's already happening in Tokyo, of course, but this really pushes the concept a little bit further. And with that, a little small project, right? So a real shift in scale to a project that's only about 100 square meters, tiny box. This is a project that's called the Skylab. So it's a laboratory really for building technologies. So you could plug and play the facades, the lighting, the air conditioning, and run some tests on it, right? So what these tests then do is inform you of how successful these technologies are with regards to environmental sustainability. The building also happens to rotate, right? So it's got this little rotational thing as you move it along, and it basically could also track the sun. So with more than 100 sensors, you could actually test out how that building reacts to its occupants and its people as well. So that takes the concept of smartness into, in this case, a project which is the National University of Singapore Architecture Block, which we're doing together with a few partners. The new architecture building for NUS, the university. This is going to be the first zero-energy institutional building in Southeast Asia, and what we've actually done is we've introduced new technologies such as if you run a fan in a room like this, you would still be thermally comfortable even if you don't jack up the air conditioning. So in doing so, we save quite a bit on air conditioning bills, and whatever's left for the students to actually use in terms of power will be offset with full solar panels. So really combining architecture in this case with engineering together with our consultant partners, and that literally reduces the energy consumption by more than 40%, right? Through optimal design in your facades and also introducing tracking of how your usage is going to be with all these simulations, of course. And the last slide, well, what do we then do as architects with limited land, with limited space? We try to export some of our expertise, some of our capabilities, and in this case, a master plan of a smart city in another one of my favorite cities, which is Bangkok, right? So this is slightly north of Bangkok and introducing architecture, urbanism, and technology from Singapore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Han, how do, Szue, how, I don't know how to call you. Tan Szue?
Just Han.
Han.